My preposterous also involves making a huge mistake at number two. What would be, to me, one of the signs, and listen, the book is far from written on Brad Holmes. He hasn't been here very long. We didn't do a whole lot outlandish last year. Penei Sewell fell to us. He was the no-brainer pick, so of course you were going to take him. And he played it pretty safe in the draft. He didn't do anything dumb. He didn't do anything that you hated. I love the beefing up the trenches that he really stuck with last year, and I wouldn't mind if he kept doing the same thing this year. We talked about not falling in love with combine heroes, not falling in love with traits. The most preposterous thing I have heard in this entire lead up to the draft the last few weeks is this absurd rise of Travon Walker. I mean, people legitimately saying he could go number one
He could
overall,
go number one.
which I'm going to go on record right now and saying it's not happening. Listen, if the Jags were to pass on Aiden Hutchinson, which I think is the clear-cut number one player in this draft, but if you want to flip it over and draft one of the tackles, whichever one you like better, whether it's Evan Neal from Alabama or not, that's also a justifiable pick at number one. You're going to shore up your left tackle or right tackle if they're going to leave Cam Robinson at left tackle for the foreseeable future. Help Trevor Lawrence, get that young offense going. That makes sense. I can understand that. I can't imagine a world where they pass up getting a tackle, getting Aiden Hutchinson, and drafting Travon Walker, who I would not touch near the top 10. You want to talk about a combine hero and talk about a guy with complete lack of tape. This is a guy for all of his athletic traits, which, let's be real, his athletic traits, while they're special, if you look at this draft, it is full of freaky edge rushers. But people, look at the 10-yard split in the three-cone times of Aiden Hutchinson and then tell me he's not a crazy high ceiling. I find it hilarious when people say, oh, Aiden Hutchinson's a safe player. He has this high floor. He doesn't have the ceiling of these other edge prospects. Have you looked at any film? Have you looked at the numbers? I mean, what are you basing ceiling on? Because don't tell me he's not athletic. If you take his RAS score, if you take his 10-yard split, his three-cone time, he's as agile and has as much bend as anyone in the draft. What are you going to knock him on? His arms aren't freakishly long. It didn't stop him from racking up 13 sacks his senior season at Michigan, which, by the way, Travon Walker did not get double-digit sacks his entire career at Georgia. And I don't mean that he didn't have a season with double-digit sacks. I mean, he spent 3 years playing at Georgia, and if you combine all of his sacks, he didn't get to double-digit sacks. And mind you, last season, he played on what is arguably the greatest defense in the history of college football, stacked with first-round NFL talent. A guy that a lot of people fell in love with. You got defensive tackle Jordan Davis. Everyone says, oh, he didn't have stats because he was eating up double and triple teams. Okay, well, there's only so many guys that get that argument. Because if Jordan Davis is eating up double and triple teams, you know who's not? Travon Walker. So if Travon Walker is this freaky athlete that's going to be this elite edge rusher at the NFL level, and he was playing next to a guy eating up all the attention, where are the numbers, dude? Where's the film?
Didn't they say though that Balky, the GM in Jacksonville, kind of falls in love with guys like Travon Walker?
Honest to God.
So
this is something I've heard a lot.
Maybe
people reference Balk. He drafted Aldon Smith over J.J. Watt. Listen, Aldon Smith was a great player outside of his off the field issues and the issues in his head, but it wasn't J.J. Watt. We can look back, and at the time, we thought J.J. Watt was a better prospect. And in hindsight, wow, J.J. Watt was the much better pick. You would think that he would learn from something like that, because I honestly think J.J. Watt is a great comparison NFL comp to Aiden Hutchinson. I think that's a really good one. You'd think as a GM, and he's been around the league a long time, he will learn from his mistakes and not fall for the flash. But listen, Aldon Smith, I at least thought was going to be a darn good NFL player. I think Travon Walker is such a wild card. Yes, he could develop, but you're not drafting at number 1 or 2 overall on he could develop. I need to see something, at least with like Kayvon Thibodeau. He was the number 1 prospect for what feels like a couple years before he slid a little bit recently. he has elite traits, but he did put a lot of stuff on film, even though it wasn't consistent. Maybe he didn't play with the motor that you thought. Maybe mentally or maturity, you're not sure if he's a perfect fit for your team, but at least I've seen a lot with him. Whereas Travon Walker, I see a dude that played on an absolutely loaded team, has all the athletic talent in the world, and has no production to match. And you want to draft this at number 2? Are you honest to God? Like, in the top half of the first round, I am apoplectic if we make this pick. There are so many better directions. I would rather take a lower athletic profile guy like George Karlaftis out of Purdue, who I think is going to be a good NFL player. I don't get it. Honestly, I don't get the hype. I will be, personally, as many times as I make fun of GMs and say that they make these stupid mistakes, I will be surprised if Travon Walker goes in the top 5. I will, because I don't think NFL GMs are that out of touch. I think this is a hype, a more of a media and a fan hype than reality. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these guys are just, they're like, you know what? I'm pushing my chips all in when I don't need to, and I'm going to make the riskiest pick imaginable. For me, if the Lions did it, it would be preposterous, and I would be almost entirely out on the Brad Holmes tenure, because you can't make mistakes like that with treasure of the number 2 pick. You cannot do it and survive long as an NFL GM. You have to nail those picks. So to me, that is the preposterous.